Morning all. I had my first game of the over the board season last night. It was for Muswell Hill. It was actually against West London Chess Club away, and I don't normally play in away matches, and I'm reminded why. It took quite a long time preparation getting there, and West London's team last night were not optimal. They did have some stronger players which were not playing. In theory, they've got strong players that are not playing, including an IM Rendell, if they wanted to put him on board one if he was available. But no, he wasn't playing, and I was playing someone who was just quite low rated on the ECF scale. In fact, just 120. So this is like one of the lowest rated players I've played in the last few years, actually, of over the board chess. I don't remember ever playing someone this low, but I was on board 6, so we actually had quite a strong team as well. Muswell Hill presented quite a strong team, okay, but there were some interesting moments in this, and I was a bit concerned, as I was actually quite significantly worse during the game, unfortunately, as we'll see. So Eleanor kicked off with e4. Eleanor's from Latvia, and apparently she had actually played Mikhail Tal when she was a kid in a simul, and I think Tal apparently gave her chances to win, and she did actually win against Tal in a simul when she was a kid. And anyway, there were 50 others apparently, and she wanted to play that down. But I think it's an interesting cultural experience, to be able to say that you've played Mikhail Tal, even if it's in a simul. I think that's really interesting. And she's also met Karpov and Sveshnikov from Latvia as well. So there's a huge, great deal of culture she's been exposed to in Latvia. But okay, in this game I played d5, the centre counter. After e takes, I tried this gambit just for fun, hoping she'd take the pawn. But alas, we see knight f3. And okay, it's not going to be a fun gambit. After c takes d, in fact, now bishop b5 check, which is really quite annoying. Let's just quickly see this position on live book. It hardly been played before, bishop b5. I was hoping for d4, and I'd play this sort of plan. d4, I'd play something like this, maybe g6, and I'll play that sort of plan. Fianchetto the bishop here. But bishop b5, I play knight c6. And after knight e5, I'm not sure this is that good. Apparently, quite a few people have played bishop d7 here. I think that's a little bit better than what I played, which was queen b6. For some reason I was thinking maybe the queen's useful there on the diagonal later, but I think bishop d7 is perhaps a little bit more to the point here, immediately asking the knight to move, unpinning. What does white really want to do in this position? It's kind of developing pieces for me. If knight takes d7, surely this is absolutely quite good for black, getting on with development. There's a missing defensive knight. The control of the central squares is not as good without the knight on f3. The bishop's going to be asked to move later. I think this is to be preferred. If knight takes, well, here, then again, it's helping my sense. I've got the b file. So, okay, queen b6. It does allow now queen e2, and I think white's actually got a decent position from the opening, and I don't really like the look of this. Knight f6 after castles e6. I'm going to put pressure on the knight soon with bishop d6, and if this bishop moves, then there's going to be knight d4. But white correctly now, I think, plays c3. Now after bishop d6, now d4. And I think here it's just possible to play just castling, which I didn't do. I think bishop d3, apparently knight d7, just engine checking this game a bit. Knight d7 is playable here, and black actually should be a little bit better here. Any attack like this can actually, it's not that significant. This just knight f6. So if I can get away with this, I'm challenging that knight, and this is a bit tricky for white, this position. f4, well, the queen b6 is justified here because of the pin. So knight takes e5, for example. So using that pin, so that would be more of a justification of the queen b6 idea, just the castle. But no, I don't play a particularly good move at all. I play bishop takes e5, giving the opponent, giving her two bishops, the bishop pair, and I've got weakened dark squares. I'm not entirely sure why I did this. It looked good at the time to kind of, I think I was trying to just create imbalances for the sake of creating imbalances, which might not be a good idea, but I needed to win. I needed to mix things up, and I wanted to steer away from sterile looking positions. I'm not entirely sure this was the way to do it. So bishop e3, queen c7, f4, and now I castle. So bishop d3 now. It looks as though actually this is quite scary. Queen h5. Getting the queen in here. I wanted to stop all this stuff, so I played f5. Now she took, which might not actually be, well, from an engine point of view, the best move. Actually, let's put on look a bit here. White is better here, significantly better. But apparently, just knight a3 or queen f2, not playing en passant. So maybe it sort of frees up my game a little bit. So technically, I'm actually okay here at this point. At move 15 for white. White's only like less than half a pawn inferior. So even though, okay, white's got the bishop pair. This bishop is a bit stuck with that, but that pawn might be a bit of a target. So knight a3, but this is the start of actually very, very good maneuver with the knight. We're going to see this kind of maneuver. Already it's also threatening with tempo on my queen, so I play a6, knight c2, bishop d7, knight d4. White's advantage is about half a pawn here. Now this is a bit of a dubious plan as well. I play, well, apparently, I mean, I'm not sure about e5. Not sure e5 break would be that good here, because surely it's just celebrating the opponent's dark square bishop. Knight takes, for example. Let's have a look at this line. F takes, rook a e1. Well, white's better. Bishop d4. It looks very pleasant for white. Significant advantage, I would say. So it doesn't look that's great, not clear for what to do here. Maybe just rook at e8. But I played knight a5, and actually this knight continues its magical journey with knight f3. I thought the intention was knight g5, knight e5. And there's a rude awakening here. I thought at least, well, maybe f4's vulnerable in the future. Or at least stop knight e5, so I played knight c4. I didn't mind the idea of a measly pawn on e6 here, because I thought I'd get the d5 square. This wasn't played, but I thought I'd get the d5 square like this, and it might be palatable to some extent. Actually, this pawn is attacked though. I mean, I would have actually considered playing b5 here. I guess there's this bishop b5, if taking here bishop b5, and that's okay for black. This looks it's equalised for black now, because of taking on c4, taking on e3, taking on c4. For example, like this. Take here and equal, apparently. So, okay. So if b5 is not needed, well, anyway, the thing is though, this knight, if b5 is played here instead, again, white's a little bit better. But the thing is, she just ignored this, actually. A very powerful and unexpected move, and this made me feel quite uncomfortable. So white play, I think, plays an absolutely brilliant move here, which I guess is not too hard to find, but it really puts me in a very, very uncomfortable position indeed. So this is at move 19. If I gave you 10 seconds here, what would you play with white? So 10 seconds, or we might want to pause the video and think about this. So white to play. Okay, Houdini very much likes her move, and it's bishop d4. Not minding about f4 at all. It'll be a total disaster if I take on f4 because of well, I thought knight e5 and the engine's actually giving something else, but let's go with knight e5 attacking the queen. See, the point is d7's loose here. Maybe taking here first is even more accurate, but this is one way of winning. Rook takes f6 for knight takes d7. So that's very, very uncomfortable. And in fact, there's an even more incisive thing here. Bishop e3, forcing an awkward move like g5, and just bishop d4 apparently is very, very strong for white, threatening all sorts of things. If, for example, rook ad8, again, rook takes f6. If rook takes f6 here, knight g4, for example. So nasty things are happening here after bishop d4. Quite unpleasant, really. Not what I expected at all so far. And in fact, more horror is about to be revealed after knight d6. I play knight d6 trying to just get a knight into e4, but there we see a very powerful move again. Simple and powerful knight g5. Not only threatening this pawn, but also threatening bishop takes f6, and h7's dropping, and the queen's also got an open invitation to get to h5. So highly unpleasant. From an engine point of view, there is one move which seems to minimise white's advantage here, which is actually knight f5. For example, knight takes e6, knight takes d4, attacking the queen, c takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and although black's pawn down, the position, at least black's not getting mated. That's one good thing, but not pleasant. White's obviously a pawn up here, but there's a lot of work still to do, perhaps. So anyway, in the game I played knight de4, and this gives white the option of just taking here, and taking here, pawn up. Okay, but at least I'm not getting mated. I can still play on a bit, so and try and wriggle here. So I play bishop b5, which at least gets rid of white's bishop pair. Bishop d3, I take that, queen takes, and after knight d5, at least I'm on f4. And white is significantly better here, technically, but in this position, a remarkable thing is about to happen. After bishop e5, I think my opponent got a bit panicky from this check. I don't know the psychology of having to respond to a check, but there was no need to panic at all here. No need at all about b2 or anything, of course, because you know, if king h1, there's no way I could take on b2 here. You know, the queen's going to just be attacked like this. Rook takes b7, and it's pretty nasty stuff. In fact, it's all caving through here after f5. This is not nice at all. But no, we get I get a bit lucky because white actually played queen d4, and although a pawn up, I'm virtually nearly almost getting a big way towards equalising just by taking the queen off here. If the bishop, you know, takes, then knight takes f4 or rook takes f4. So I've got my pawn back, and okay, it's a bit miserable, but you know, it's better than earlier. So we see actually, though, c takes d4, clinging on to the extra pawn. But here, if we evaluate this position, if I gave you 10 seconds just to evaluate the position, who do you think's better now? You might want to pause the video. Okay, if some thoughts about this position, the bishop's kind of a little bit bad now. My c file is, you know, I'm first to the c file here. So I play that, and white's still trying to cling on to the pawn here, and plays the move g3, because if rook c1, then I can get my pawn back at least, and it's going to be about equal. And in fact, there's nasty things can happen like this. Whites get mated if not careful. So we get a kind of equalish rook and pawn ending here, which I think is, if anything, white's maybe slightly better here, but it's equal. But no, that wasn't played. White's still trying to cling on to the pawn and plays g3, and now this allows, of course, a rook on the 7th. And white, I think, in theory, technically, should really play rook f2. But getting into a bit of time pressure now, because I've been playing moves quite quickly in this game, perhaps explaining some of the kind of not the greatest moves in the opening. But bishop d6, I've got a big, like an hour clock advantage or something. But white starts playing a bit aimlessly. Bishop d6, I can strengthen my c file now. Bishop c5, I just kick that with the knight, that beautiful knight on d5, and get my rooks connected again. And now, I think a little bit played too quickly this move. Knight e3. I think a bit optimistically hoping for rook f2. There'll be a disastrous splat after rook c1. Well, either winning the exchange or mating white here. But no. White still blunders, though, in this position. After knight e3. Best, apparently, is rook f e1. And okay, what can I do here? Well, there's quite a few options. I mean, this is quite a dangerous one, just going for h2. But apparently, white should be able to hold if it stops knight f3 to avoid getting mated. No, I think I might actually be better still here, because the rook on the 7th, it's starting to show some effect. So I'm just following this engine line here now. Black's just clearly better here actually now, in this kind of position. But the advantage is still technically less than half a pawn. Now what happened in the game was actually quite a bad blunder here instead. After knight e3, it wasn't, rook e1 wasn't played. There's rook f3 instead that was played. Perhaps with the idea to get the rook to d3 if the knight budges. Now if the knight, did budge, like to f5, then like rook d1 and, white's always got still, if rook e2, rook f2, there's no big deal here. But what happened here was actually, there's another move which is very, very good here, thankfully, at my disposal. I was delighted to find it. I wonder if I gave you 10 seconds here, what would you play with black? Or you might want to pause the video, so starting from now, 10 seconds. Okay, I'm just throwing in this check. It pushes the king in the corner. So there's no rook f2s now, so rook e2 protecting the knight. So I'm going to get both rooks on the 7th. And this is disastrous for white, this position now, with both rooks on the 7th. In desperation, she sacrificed the exchange. And it's pretty hopeless. My other rook's still coming to c2 now. Bishop c3, rook e2. And here my opponent resigned. So yeah, I was a bit fortunate in this game. Yeah, I think the opening I was clearly worse, and it's just that interesting transition, a pawn up. Things started to go very, very badly wrong for white after being a pawn up, it seemed, in this critical moment for this position. First that c file, and now kind of acceleration on the c file, having to play g3. Wants to play g3 to cling onto the pawn, and this is, this position is fine now at move 28. So I think even though I'm pawn down, it's a beautiful knight on d5 and possession of the c file. If you think about the light squares, maybe even a king march is possible. This sort of thing. to kind of build on the advantages here that exist. So yeah, I was a bit fortunate there, and because it looked quite scary early on. Okay, I hope you got something from that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.